Prescott cannot win you the games consistently. Dak Prescott is not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And he is the reason that you have to win. It's not going to happen.
He's not as good as Burrow. He's not as good as Herbert. He's not as good as Mahomes. I mean, he maybe, if I pushed it, maybe he's around 10.
You need a quarterback that wins playoff games. We don't have one.
For years now, Dak Prescott has led the Dallas Cowboys to mediocrity. They've achieved nothing and are going nowhere with him. Yet, he's still considered a top 10 quarterback in the NFL for some reason. I've spent the last week trying to figure it out, and I think I may have figured out how and why Dak Prescott is so overrated. But to figure out how we got to this point, we have to go back to the beginning. Dak Prescott is the current quarterback for America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. He played his college football at Mississippi State, is a two-time Pro Bowler, Walter Payton's Man of the Year 2022, and is entering his 8th season in the NFL. A 4th-round draft pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, Prescott was initially listed as the 4th-string quarterback. Backup quarterback Kellen Moore, and yes, that's right, the current OC for the Chargers, broke his right tibia early on in training camp. It was between Prescott and second-year quarterback Jamil Showers to fight it out for the backup job behind Tony Romo. Dak was the NFL's breakout performer in the preseason. He went 39 of 50 for 454 yards and 5 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and no INTs. In week 3 of the preseason, Tony Romo suffered a back injury that would put him out for at least 8 to 10 weeks, and Dak was named the starter for week 1. And don't get me wrong, he had a great rookie season. He threw for 3,667 yards, 23 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and had a QBR rating of 77.6. At this point in time, Dak Prescott honestly looked like the real deal. He's right up there with the likes of Robert Griffin and Russell Wilson as having some of the best rookie quarterback seasons. He was voted into the Pro Bowl and named Offensive Rookie of the Year. Unfortunately for Dak though, it started going downhill after that. The 77.6 QBR rating he achieved in his rookie year is the best he's ever got in the NFL. His 4 INTs are a joint career low for him. It's not a stretch to say that his career peaked in his rookie season. He faced a few injuries along the way too, and honestly has never been able to replicate that same season. In the 2020 season, he suffered a compound fracture and a dislocation to his right ankle in week 5, and the injury landed him on the IR for the remainder of the season. And as we all know, injuries are never good, but plenty of players come back from horrific injuries. Tom Brady recovered from a torn ACL and MCL in 2008. Peyton Manning missed the 2011 season due to a spinal fusion surgery, but came back better than ever and won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. Drew Brees tore his rotator cuff in 05 and came back to win the Super Bowl with the Saints in 09. And he holds the record for career passing yards. But there's one thing that these all have in common. All these players are quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are bound to get injured. It's a part of the game. What separates you from your average quarterback to an elite talent is your ability to recover from these setbacks. Dak simply doesn't have that ability. I mean, if you just look at the stats before his ankle injury, Dak was scoring so many rushing touchdowns, and on top of that was rushing for an average of 300 yards a year. Since then, he's managed just 2 rushing touchdowns and rushed for half the yards. It seems as though the older Dak gets, the more injury prone he's getting, which isn't uncommon. He's now 30 years old, and if history is correct, his body should start to decline now too. I mean, that is unless you are Tom Brady. It's not out of the question that the injury severely hampered his ability to rush and extend plays, but the best players find new ways to adapt. If you can't rush like you used to, focus on being a better passer. But Prescott couldn't do that either. Since his injury in 2020, he's become an INT machine.
Jerry Jones got on his radio show, it was quoted, "Turnovers is not Dak's DNA." Well, guess what? And Dak, you are the father of those turnovers.
Really?
Yeah, you are the father of those 2 interceptions and those 7 straight games with at least 1 interception in 3 of those games.
And those 15 interceptions that led the league this year.
Throwing 10 and 15 in 2021 and 22. In fairness though, the 2021 season, he had a passer rating of 104.2 and a career high 37 touchdowns. But so far, that season has been a complete anomaly. His ankle wasn't the only injury. In week 1 of the 2022 season, he fractured his thumb on his throwing hand. Obviously, this was a massive concern and perhaps contributed to his stat line. He did show a lot of grit and determination to play through the injury after his surgery, but maybe he would have just been better off sitting out the season fully recovering. The Cowboys did win 4 games with Cooper Rush as their starter in Dak's absence too. And this is my favorite stat because since 2016, Dak has led the Cowboys to the playoffs 4 times, but they have never won more than 1 game. Let's start here. 2 playoff wins. Yes, that's right. Just 2. And I mean, Dak has all the tools ever since his rookie season. He's had players and defenses around him to succeed, but he can only manage 2 wins when it counts. You see, Dak has had players like CeeDee Lamb, Dez Bryant, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and Jason Witten. Every year, he's standing behind one of the best offensive lines in the league, but when push comes to shove, he cannot capitalize on it. Like, I mean, the Cowboys have Zach Martin, the undisputed best guard in the league. All Dak needs to do is throw the ball accurately. There's been too many times where he throws the ball into double coverage or even triple coverage. Like, look at this picture. Where is he throwing this and why? What made you think that this was a good read? Because I mean, his decision making is a big factor in why he is overrated. The Cowboys are in a competitive division. Mistakes are going to be highlighted at this level. In the 2022 season, Dak only played 12 games, but he threw 15 interceptions. America's team's quarterback threw more picks than he played.
Everybody thinks that because he's on the Dallas Cowboys, you get overrated. Well, he's a Cowboy, he's wearing a star, he's Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was not good against San Francisco.
Dak is yet to prove that he can perform to be an elite level quarterback and lead his team to, I mean, at least the NFC Championship. The best quarterbacks thrive in those situations. Look at Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. When the team needs them, they put all the pressure on themselves and make plays. They win games. Dak's inability to do this is crippling his team. And again, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of pressure playing for the Dallas Cowboys. America's team probably comes under the most scrutiny when they don't perform to the level that's demanded by the fans. That must play a factor into Dak's decline, but is almost definitely a factor as to why he's hyped up as much as he has been lately. I mean, Baker Mayfield is another quarterback who has had a good rookie season, but then started a gradual decline and is now a journeyman. As crazy as it sounds too, their stats aren't too different. Baker threw 13 interceptions in 14 games with his last season with the Browns, and now that he's a journeyman, he's been on his 3rd team in as many years. Carson Wentz is another example. He threw 15 interceptions in 12 games in his last season in Philly, and they shipped him off to the Colts. Wentz struggled hugely with decision making and was criticized heavily for some of his mistakes. And honestly, it really makes you wonder, if Dak was putting up these stats on another team, would he still be playing football for that franchise?
Dak Prescott is not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He is a very good quarterback, but when he is the reason that you have to win, it's not going to happen.
I'd argue no. Most likely he'd be fighting out for the starting job on a team that's on the fringes of the playoffs, or he'd be a backup for a good team. Either way, he would be rated accordingly. And despite their loss this past week, the Cowboys are still one of the best teams in the league, but it makes you think, how good could they be if they had a decent quarterback? We've seen it so many times where old quarterbacks come into teams where all they have to do is manage the game and throw the ball efficiently. That's the situation the Cowboys are in right now. They need to realize how overrated Dak is. And perhaps they have. They traded for Trey Lance earlier this year, and even though Lance has been a colossal flop since he was drafted, maybe he deserves a chance to play behind a superb O-line who gives him the chance to make plays. Who knows though? I mean, if it works with Lance, it could work with any other quarterback. The Cowboys just need to take inspiration from the San Francisco 49ers. They're another team that has all the pieces at their disposal. They have Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy as their quarterback. He's nothing special. He puts the ball into the hands of his playmakers and lets their magic work. And if they don't want to look at another team, they can always look at their own team with Cooper Rush's performance last season. This shows that anyone can fill Dak's position and even outperform him. And it's a completely different story for another day, but it is a possibility that Dak transitioned into the NFL too early also. He wasn't even drafted to be a starter immediately, but was thrown into that role, and he never really had time to learn and develop behind Romo before taking over the reins. And just looking at history, it tells us that some of the best quarterbacks sit and learn before they develop into future Hall of Famers. Aaron Rodgers, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, and even Eli Manning all sat behind a vet and learned. Dak didn't get that chance, and perhaps it did hinder him. Either way though, the Cowboys need to realize that Dak is not their guy and that they are not getting to the Super Bowl with him at the helm.